Hi besties, welcome back to my channel, or hi, my name is Stacy if you're new here. So for today's video, we're reviewing the new Patrick Ta Volume 2 blush palette that he released for the holidays. So it kind of looks like a lighter version of last year's palette. So I walk you through my blush application, and these are the blushes I'm wearing right now. And I also show a bunch of swatches and comparisons compared to last year's holiday palette, as well as some other blush comparisons I have in my collection. So if that sounds good to you, then just keep on watching. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, because it really helps out my channel and it would really mean a lot to me. And let's just get right into the video. Okay, so first off, I do want to mention that the packagings are different. This was last year's, which has like this reflective packaging, and this year's, it's a more like matte finish kind of, or like a satin finish, I don't know. Basically, it doesn't show like fingerprints as much as the one from last year. It's just not as reflective and annoying to like show on camera as well. Okay, and then here are the beautiful shades. Based off of just looking at them, I'm already liking the new one better just because they're paler shades, so they will fit my skin tone better and my preferences. So we're gonna apply these blushes the Patrick Ta way, which is to use the powders first. I'm gonna use this pink one called Giving Flirty, and we're just gonna use the powder. Okay, so far I'm loving this shade, and hopefully you guys can see that it does have a kind of luminous finish to it. There's like a shimmer in it. And I will say it's not the finest shimmer, as in like I feel like I can see the shimmer, but there's no glitter particles. So I think this is a little bit different than Patrick Ta's previous blushes, like all of them. While they were all like mildly satiny, I would say, this one definitely has like a very clear glow going on, as you can see, hopefully. As for the color, it's like this bubblegum pink, but it is lighter than the one from last year, She's a Doll. I'll have the swatches and comparisons after my application section, so stay tuned for that. And also, even though these are like lighter shades, I would say that they are still pretty pigmented. They're definitely more buildable. Like, I don't have to be as careful with these as I do with last year's, but like they definitely pack a punch. I mean, I'm like building it up more, but overall it's like I don't think I'm gonna get clown cheeks, you know? Okay, that's enough for the powder blush on this side. And now we're gonna go into the cream. Just take like a stippling brush, and I'm just gonna place that right on top, kind of like on my cheekbone area. The nice part about these creams is that they don't really pick up powder because they're like a thin formula, so they're not really like adding too much emollients, even though they are like a glowy formula. So I'm actually taking some on my sponge, and I'm just gonna tap some on there as well. I know that's what a lot of people like to do. And that just like melts everything into the skin. It gives it that kind of glass skin appearance. Woo! It looks so pretty. I really like this one over She's a Doll. This is like the She's a Doll for light skin tones, if that makes sense. Because it gives basically the same effect, but it's just like easier to work with on my skin. And it might be a little bit cooler toned. So we'll see in the swatches. Okay, now on this cheek, I'm gonna go into this coral shade, which is Giving Sunkissed. And this is kind of a more like muted coral, which I prefer because sometimes corals are like super bright and neon, and that's not super flattering on my skin tone. So we'll see how this looks. So first I'm just applying the powder. And as you can see, well, I do normally use a light hand anyways, but it's like I'm building this up over layers. But if you use a heavier hand, you would get more pigment faster. I'm just saying that this is both like buildable yet pigmented because it's pretty strong on my face, but it doesn't get to that point too quickly. And right off the bat, I think this one's less glowy. In the pan, it's harder to tell because I couldn't really see the shimmers that clearly in the pan. I can like kind of see them. This one is very clearly less glowy to me. This one was very luminous, like just with the powder, but this powder, you can see that there's a slight sheen, but it's definitely not as strong. Also, this shade is so pretty for a coral. So for me personally, I prefer cooler tones. Everything like tends to pull warm on me. So if I'm gonna go for a warm tone, sometimes it just pulls too bright and too orange. But this is like a really nice, it's more muted, kind of burnt coral, but not too burnt. Like not too brown, not too orange, red, more like subdued. But obviously on my skin tone, it looks a little bit brighter. I think if you're deeper than me, it would look more nudie, like a kind of nudie peach, I feel like. But yeah, this is just the powder by itself. So you can see there is a slight glow, but I think it's definitely less luminous. That's really pretty. So anyways, now we're gonna layer up our cream on top. And this cream, I can see in the pan, also has some gold shimmer to it. Oh yeah, they both have gold shimmer, just to be clear. It's kind of like NARS Orgasm vibes. I'm not sure how obvious the difference is on camera. This is clearly more orangey, and this one is more like a bubblegum cool pink. But I do like that this one has enough pink in it to where it doesn't like look orange on me. That's like a problem I tend to have. So here are the two cheeks just by themselves. Hopefully you guys can get a good look because I'm gonna add the highlighter on after this. Once I put the creams on, they kind of look similar in terms of luminous finish. I mean, I guess this side is still a little bit less luminous because this one already had luminosity from the powder. Like this is like double luminous. This one just has luminosity mostly from the cream. But either way, like just sinks into your skin and gives you that like glass skin effect. So pretty. Okay, now we're gonna test this highlight. So this shade, this kind of creamy gold shade, is Patrick Ta's first highlight, or first powder highlight, I guess. We're already starting off with a glow, so it might be harder to see, but we're just gonna tap 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 So I'm being very careful not to add too much at once because I don't want to look crazy, but hopefully you guys can see that it did strengthen this highlight because this is the side with the highlight and this is without. Okay, and I have a fair to light skin tone and this highlight looks quite deep in the pan, but on me, this is definitely one of those that I can pull off. It doesn't have that dark cast that a lot of deeper highlights can have, so this definitely works on my skin tone. But I do think this will work on deeper skin tones, but definitely deeper than me because I feel like this highlight was made for people deeper than me. It still looks good on me, like it's not pulling that dark cast, so I think we're good on that. Okay, and then on this side I'll do the balm highlight so we can see the difference, I guess. And I'm pretty sure this balm is clear. Just, it's on my middle finger. It actually does have a slight gold shimmer in it, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of the balm with this sponge, I guess. Okay, I will say that this is basically just like fancy Vaseline. It doesn't feel super heavy, and I think it's okay like in the cooler months, which we're heading into, but definitely I wouldn't wear this highlight in the summer. But you can see it's giving me that glass skin effect. But if you don't like a true balm on your face, you're not gonna like this highlight. Okay, let's do the hair test. Okay, I'm gonna put my hair in and then, so like, yeah, you can see it is sticking my hair a little bit, so it doesn't pass the hair test. So that's kind of the formula. It's like a thin balm, but it's a balm. If you don't like that, that's gonna happen. But as for like feeling it on my face, I don't really feel it that much. Okay, like let's do it on this side. You see how it's sticking less to this side because it has powder on it, whereas on this side. So yeah, that's the difference. For this balm highlight, I would recommend using a light hand. Like you don't really need much. I actually built it up more than I would next time, just because I want you guys to like really see the glow. I actually like the way the balm looks better. I think on camera it's harder to see, but in person, like this highlighter is kind of detectable. I would say it's not like the finest shimmer. It is a more pronounced shimmer. This one, you can't detect it at all, but it just looks like I have dewy skin. But again, it has the cons of a balm, so just to be very clear on that. Okay, so here's the finished pink side with the powder highlight, just to give you a final look. And here's the finished coral side with the balm on. And you can see from far away too, like it's giving me like these glowy apple cheeks. Anyways, okay, so I'm actually back on a different day, but let's just get right into the swatches, shall we? And also I have the pink blush from the palette on my cheeks today. I turned the front light down, so hopefully you guys can see the colors better. But here's the palette swatched by itself. And the highlight balm is basically clear. And then here's the highlight, which is kind of like a peachy gold shade. It's kind of hard to see on my skin tone, but yeah. The first thing I noticed when I swatched these is that the blushes have this like milky undertone, which I particularly like. I think that's what makes it work well for fair skin tones, but if you're deeper than like a medium, I would say, I'm not sure how well these would work on you. The pigment is there, but I'm saying like they have white in the pigment. So especially on like deep skin tones, I don't think it would look the most flattering because it's gonna have like a milky appearance or like ashy appearance. But actually on my skin tone, I really like that they're pale, especially this coral shade. In my opinion, it's kind of hard to find like a subdued coral like this that has like a milkiness to it. I'm gonna compare it to some other blushes that might be similar, but anyway. Here's last year and this year's palettes side by side, so hopefully you guys can see the color difference. But you can see even with the pinks, which I would say are the most similar, the top one, which is this year's, is just a lot milkier. I keep on saying milky, but that's kind of like the best description. I guess like you could say it has more white in it, it's lighter, more pastel, etc. But they're not super pastel because they're still kind of bright. Basically, if you added white to the shades from last year's, is kind of the vibe that I'm getting. So let's just do a brief swatch comparison to last year's. I'm just gonna swatch last year's on the side, so the swatch is gonna be a little bit small. Okay, I just swatched last year's on this side. I know the swatches are a little bit tiny, but I think they're big enough that you can see the difference. They're just a lot more vibrant, a lot more saturated compared to this year's. To me, they're basically like a light and dark version of each other, so it would have made more sense to me if he released these at the same time. For last year's palette, it was harder to make work on light skin tones, although it's like still usable, but these brighter colors are just not as flattering in my opinion on lighter skin tones compared to deeper skin tones. And then vice versa for this year's, like these colors are definitely geared towards light skin tones. I think like a medium skin tone can pull this off, but probably not like an actually deep skin tone. So like the inclusivity of having just like one of these palettes in each holiday release doesn't really make sense to me, because I feel like for both releases he kind of like left people out. You're just like, what? Also, last year's holiday blushes were eventually released individually, which is nice, especially since the palette was limited edition. So I have a feeling that he's gonna do the same in the future for these, but we don't know yet for sure. But there's definitely no dupes between the holiday palettes. I think the most similar are the pinks. You can see the difference in the saturation level. The other thing is, like, I don't know why he put a highlight in this year's palette. I'm honestly not the biggest fan of it. Like, I wish he put a different blush. So that's my 2 cents on the comparisons between the 2 holiday palettes. But now I want to get into some swatches of some other blushes I have in my collection. First, I want to compare to a couple of Patrick Ta's other blushes that he has. So first, I'm going to compare to She's That Girl. And I can immediately tell this is like a more muted down pink, like a toned down pink. It's also warmer. I'm just going to swatch it next to the pink in this holiday palette just so you can see. Okay, so here's the first comparison. This is the bubblegum pink from the holiday palette called Giving Flirty, and this is She's That Girl, which is a single. And as you can see, She's That Girl looks almost like corally in comparison. It's like a warmer pink. It's also a bit deeper. Like, Giving Flirty has a white base to it, but She's That Girl, it has a little bit of white, especially in the powder, but less so in the cream. And yeah, it's just like deeper, a little bit more saturated, and it's a lot warmer. So that's the difference between the two. Definitely not dupes in my opinion. I actually want to point out that I think the She's That Girl powder looks very similar to the cream of the coral shade called Giving Sunkissed in the holiday palette. Like, these are kind of equivalents to me, but this is a powder and this is a cream. But She's That Girl powder is cooler than the Giving Sunkissed powder. Like, this is more orange. But She's That Girl and Giving Sunkissed are actually a lot more similar to each other than I thought, because this is supposed to be pink, so I thought it would correspond with the pink, but not so much. Okay, and then here's my comparison for Giving Sunkissed, which is Do We Know Her, which is like his original peachy duo. Also, off the bat, I can tell you that the original creams are more pigmented. I'm not sure if it's just because they don't have as much of a white base as like the new creams. The new creams definitely have like a milky white base to them, and the old creams are more saturated. But anyway, here is the peachy duo called Do We Know Her versus Giving Sunkissed in the holiday. So I would say these are pretty similar-ish. I mean, they'll probably look more similar on the cheeks, but in person, when I'm looking at it, Do We Know Her is actually more orange. Like, if you look at it, it's like a more creamsicle type vibe, and also the powder is lighter. The powder has a lot of white in it. It's kind of interesting because for the originals, the powder is a lot whiter than the cream. The cream is like more saturated and the powder has a lot of white in it. But I would say for this holiday launch, like, they all have white in it. So that's kind of the difference. This Giving Sunkissed shade is a little bit more peach, I would say, actually. Like, it has more pink in it. So actually, between the two, I prefer the Giving Sunkissed one, which is like the new one. I'm actually just such a fan of this Giving Sunkissed shade because it's a peach that still has enough pink in it. Because a lot of peaches, as I said earlier, lean this orange shade. Like, this is a more easy to find peach shade, but this new Giving Sunkissed one is harder to find that exact pink to orange ratio. If you know, you know. And I have nothing to compare for the highlights because this is Patrick Ta's first powder highlight, so we're gonna leave it at that. And lastly, since we're still talking about Patrick Ta blushes, I do want to mention that the new ones are different from all of the old ones in that the new ones have glitter. So the old ones from my swatches from just now, like the holiday palette and also like the individual duos, none of them had glitter in it, but these new ones definitely have glitter particles. So if you're not a fan of that, I don't think you'll like this. Is that something that's very important to consider? Okay, I don't know if my camera is catching the glitter particles. Hopefully it is, but if it isn't, it's because the glitter particle is actually very fine, but definitely like if you hold a mirror up close, you can see like there's little specks on your cheeks. And actually I'd say the glitters are the most pronounced in the creams. So to avoid that effect, you can use the powders more. The powders have more like a pearlescence to them, but they don't have detectable glitter from what I can see. But the creams definitely have detectable like little specks of glitter. So that's just something very important to note because I know that's gonna be like a deal breaker for some people. I personally don't mind that much, but I know it's not like the most natural looking thing. So, okay, now I'm just gonna pull a few blushes from my collection that I immediately thought of when I saw these blushes. So first off, I have Huda Beauty Proud Pink. Mine is ugly because it fell out of the packaging. So I'm just gonna swatch this next to the pink shade. So Huda Beauty Proud Pink is a lot more pearlescent, like it's more sheeny. There's a gold pearl running through it and it's warmer. Giving Flirty is just like a cool bubblegum pink. And the Huda Beauty one is supposed to be a cool pink, but in comparison, it's still warmer. So that's the difference, but you can kind of see how it's more metallic. Another one I wanted to compare was Makeup by Mario Soft Coral, which looks like this, because this is like a soft coral shade, and I really thought that this new one is like a soft coral. They are relatively similar, like they're the same vibe, and probably on the cheeks they probably look similar, but I will say the Makeup by Mario is just a touch deeper and it's less milky. It has some milkiness to it, but I don't know, like there's a difference between this one and this one, you see? This one's like milkier and a little bit pinker, and this one is a little bit deeper. But overall, yeah, like they probably look very similar. I don't know though, there's something about this Giving Sunkissed shade that makes it like my favorite coral that I found so far. As compared to the Dior blushes, since there's like a pink and a coral, which is like the same vibe, I feel like they're not gonna be super similar though. And plus the Diors are only a powder. Okay, so here's Dior Pink. So actually Dior Pink is cooler. It's more blue, and it also is more white than the Giving Flirty one. Similar vibes, not really dupes, I would say. Let's watch the Dior Coral. Oh, so it actually looks more similar than I thought. Here's Dior Coral, and this is giving Sunkissed. Similar to the Dior Pink, it has like a whiter base to it. So if your skin tone can pull off these Dior ones, I think you can pull off these ones. But that's just based off of the swatch on my skin tones, and I know that the Dior one kind of like changes color, so I'm not 100% sure, but definitely give the same vibes, and I feel like maybe that's what Patrick Ta was trying to do. I think those are pretty good comparisons. If you have the Dior ones, you don't necessarily need these ones unless you want the creams, because I feel like the cream shades are also pretty unique. I don't have exact dupes for the cream shades, but obviously you can dupe the vibes. Another powder I wanted to compare was Makeup by Mario Creamy Peach, because the Patrick Ta one reminds me of like a creamy peach shade. So I'd actually say the Creamy Peach is very similar to the Patrick Ta powder. So the most unique out of the Patrick Ta ones are like this cool bubblegum pink and then the cream of the coral shade. Powder is pretty dupeable because it's a little bit more orange. Actually, yeah, it's very similar to Creamy Peach. This is a pretty good dupe, I would say. But here are some other ones I have that might be comparable. We have Pat McGrath, Aphrodite Amore. This kind of reminds me of the peach shade. But yeah, Aphrodite Amore is still more pastel than Giving Sunkissed, and it's more pink. So not super comparable. Wanted to compare Cherish, which is like that, it's like a cooler pink, but I can tell already that it's not really comparable. Like, it doesn't have a white base to it as the Patrick Ta one has, or it has less of a white base, like it's less milky looking. So I think actually Cherish would be a good equivalent on deeper skin tones. Okay, next up I have Nymphette. I thought it would be similar to the pink, but I can tell the pink is like much more of a bubblegum pink. So here's Nymphette. It's kind of on my knuckle. Nymphette Giving Flirty. So it's a lot warmer than Giving Flirty, but I would say these are the similar depth. Here's Nude Venus, which I thought would be like a subdued coral shade. Oh wait, here's Nude Venus, and here's Giving Sunkissed. Nude Venus, Giving Sunkissed. Nude Venus has a little bit more brown in it though. Nude Venus, Giving Sunkissed. Like, it has a little bit more of that like brown peach, whereas Giving Sunkissed is more like a milky coral peach. Hopefully you guys can see that difference. Okay, I'm gonna do a last comparison with NARS Orgasm, which is like a classic. Guys, this is my NARS Orgasm from high school, and this is the only blush I've ever panned because I used it every day in high school. So she's old. So off the bat, NARS Orgasm is a lot less pigmented. Not sure if that's just because mine is like 6 years old. NARS blushes tend to be very like not pigmented anyways, or like they're very buildable. Like, you have to layer them up to get a lot of pigment. But yeah, like the vibe is definitely there. And NARS Orgasm is a lot more shimmery. Like, I was saying how the Giving Flirty one has shimmer in it. Hopefully you guys can see, like, it's giving my cheeks this pearlescence. But I also have the cream on top, but I didn't add too much cream. I'm not wearing highlight besides the cream blush. But the NARS Orgasm one, like, the sheen is a lot stronger. Like, you can kind of see that gold flip. It's definitely a lot more metallic in its pearlescence. Similar to the Huda Beauty Proud Pink, like you can see that flip. So the Patrick Ta isn't as strong as those metallic ones. I guess another similar one would be Charlotte Tilbury Pinkasm. Here, I'll swatch Pinkasm. Not me going crazy with the swatches. It's a lot more like rose gold, so it's warmer and has like more bronziness to it. And this is Giving Flirty. It's just like a bubblegum pink. So I would say that is actually not super comparable. It's Pinkasm versus Giving Flirty. But yeah, Pinkasm and NARS Orgasm are very similar. You couldn't tell from the names. Okay, so my conclusion for the dupes. I would say the Giving Flirty shade is harder to dupe because the one from last year's was a lot more saturated, but the Dior one is even more blue and white. And other like well-known cool pinks are actually warmer. So yeah, if you love like that cool baby doll bubblegum pink look, I think you'll like Giving Flirty. Also, if you don't care about glitter, because there is glitter in the cream. And then moving on to Giving Sunkissed, I think this is actually my favorite duo in this palette. This cream shade specifically is not very dupeable. It has this creaminess in the look to it. I keep saying milky because that's like what it is, but it's not super white. It just has like a milky undertone, and it's like a subdued, muted coral, which like muted coral is kind of hard to find in my opinion. Yeah, like others are a lot more orange. So I actually am in love with the Giving Sunkissed cream blush. But again, it does have some like sparse glitter particles in it, so that's something to be aware of. The powder in the Giving Sunkissed one is a lot more dupeable. The closest dupe is Makeup by Mario Creamy Peach. So if you have that, you don't need this. But if you want like that cream and powder duo, this is a good one to have. The highlight, I'm not gonna dupe because I feel like all highlights dupe each other. This is why I don't like buying highlights. Like, I only buy them when they come in palettes basically. Usually. There's probably 500,000 highlights that look like this. Again, I will say this highlight has some shimmer and like glitter specks in it. So if you don't like that, you're not gonna like this. So now I'm just gonna remove this craziness off of my hand and wrap up my final thoughts with you guys. Okay, so what are my final thoughts on this Patrick Ta Holiday Blush Palette Volume 2? Definitely geared towards light to medium skin tones. If you have a deeper complexion than medium, I'm not sure these will show up nicely on you. Like, I feel like these might look ashy, but you can like confirm that with people who have deeper skin. I don't want to speak for them. The other thing is that this highlight definitely works on my fair light complexion. This was kind of a weird choice. The highlight I would say is more universal, but it's a little bit deep to be in a palette with these blushes. Overall, it definitely does work on my like paler complexion. If you're a fair to light person, it will work on you. If you're like the fairest, like if you usually buy the lightest foundation, I usually buy like the second or third lightest like level of foundation. So I feel like if you are fairer than me, I think it might start to have that dark cast that might not look so good. So that's just something to be aware of. Also on this highlighter, it's not my favorite. It's really not. I actually think this highlighter is pretty mediocre, like the more I thought about it. First of all, the balm is clear. So if you're not into that glass skin, like dewy look, like where it actually feels like creamy on your skin, you're not gonna like this. So that automatically kind of rules out a bunch of people. But like, okay, if you're like, oh, I'm not gonna use the balm. Then for the powder is not the best highlight in my opinion. This is Patrick Ta's first powder highlight that he's come out with, and I just think that it's not the most finely milled. It has like some shimmer and sparkle particles in it. Not a lot. Like it's not as glittery as like the Fenty Diamond Balm or something, but like it does have noticeable particles. So if you're a person who doesn't like a detectable highlight, like if you put this highlight on, you can tell this person is wearing highlighter, if that makes sense. So definitely not my favorite. It's not bad by any means. It's more just like very mediocre. With Patrick Ta, I have really high expectations. Like I freaking love most of his formulas. The highlighter is kind of a dud to me. If he eventually releases these like individually like he did with last year's, I recommend just going for the blushes. So that's my 2 cents on that. Now for the blushes, I freaking love these shades. Like they are really pretty. As a person with a pale complexion, I prefer blushes that are like these, that have a white base to them. I feel like their most unique part is their undertones, which is what I kind of expect from Patrick Ta. Like I want him to do like more innovative things. And I do feel like at least the undertone of this cream and also the undertone of this pink is quite hard to find, or at least like I haven't duped it in my collection. This powder though is more dupable in my opinion, so there's that. So yeah, love these blush shades. I like it better than last year's blush shades. I think I will get more use out of these blushes than last year's. Last year's I really like for summer because it has that vibrancy, and I like brighter, like more neon-ish colors in the summer. I don't know, these are like a muted bright, if that makes sense. Even this coral and like this bubblegum pink, they are giving my cheeks a vibrancy. It's not as muted as other like nudie blushes. So like these are not nude or pastel by any means, but they're like a muted bright blush. So anyways, I think if you have a pale skin tone and you want a brighter blush look, I think these are perfect, because I feel like generally speaking when people do bright blushes, they make them like the holiday one from last year's, which is great for deeper skin tones and it shows up on them well. But if you want a bright blush and you have a light skin tone, you have to like work very, very light-handedly with those. Whereas these are like, they'll still give you that bright cheek look, but in a much more wearable way. The biggest problem with these is that there's glitter in every single one of these creams. The powders are less so. Like they have more of like a pearlescence to them, not as much noticeable glitter sparks. So like what I've noticed is yesterday I applied a ton of the cream blush of this pink one, and I noticed like these glitter particles across my cheeks and I was like, whoa, what's happening? But then today I actually applied mostly the powder. So what you're seeing is mostly the powder of the pink. And then I applied like the teeniest bit of the cream to like make it glow a little bit more, but it was very minimal. This is mostly powder. So I feel like that's the way to go if you don't like a super glittery look. Like, cause now today when I'm looking up close, I can't see the glitter particles. So I think it was just because yesterday I built up the cream a lot that I saw like very distinct glitter particles. And it's not my favorite look, but I don't like mind it that much. But I know for a fact that there are gonna be people who don't like that. So I'm not really sure why he added the glitter, especially into the cream. Because normally like if you add glitter into powder, it helps make it more blendable or something. I don't know. I'm not a chemist, but like I don't know why he had to do that to the cream. It might be because this is like a holiday release. So like he wanted it to be more like holiday festive glittery. But like I feel like this is glittery in the wrong way. I prefer for the glitter to be removed. But like for me it's still wearable, and because I like these shades a lot, I would still continue to use this. But yeah, that's just like a very big caveat, because I feel like people either love or hate the glitter thing, so that's a big thing to note. But the formula of everything is basically the same formula as all the Patrick Ta blushes. Like the powders, I would say they're pigmented, but they're buildable. Like you won't start off like looking crazy. And then the creams are a lot more sheer. But again, they are a buildable sheer. Like the more you build them up, the more color you'll have. But again, I recommend using a light hand with these so you don't get too much of that glitter spray. But the thing is, like when you combine them, it gives you like this beautiful glass skin cheek that still like lasts longer than other like cream cheeks, because you have that powder base. So it's just like the best of both worlds in terms of like the appearance of your cream blush. Yeah, so that's why these Patrick Ta blushes have been like some of my holy grails for a while. Yeah, my biggest complaint is like, why did he add glitter in this? Like that was not necessary. I feel like made it a lot less wearable for a lot of people. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I hope also my dupe / comparison section was helpful. And maybe like you already own those blushes I showed, maybe you don't want this, or maybe you like the kind of very nuanced differences between those. But either way, I hope this video helped you out. Stay tuned for a lot more holiday reviews coming up. I'm trying to slowly make my way through them, and I know I'm like a little bit behind because my shipping has just been taking longer than other people's. I don't know what's up with that, but I feel like I keep getting my packages after other people when I'm trying to get these reviews up for you guys really fast. But anyways, please be patient for my reviews and keep on staying tuned so you can see them in the future. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like this video, and comment and subscribe down below if you want to see more content like this, because it really helps out my channel and it would really mean a lot to me. And I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.